Hello, everybody. I'm Stephanie.
And I'm Georgianna.
And this is Wholehearted Loving, where we teach you simple tools to grow the muscles you need to be with big feelings and overwhelming sensations in your body.
Whether you have active challenges in your life or relationships, or whether you're just here to learn to be kinder to yourself, we pull out all the little things that make life feel better, the things that give you a sense of hope and direction.
So if you're too hard on yourself or on others,
if you want to feel real, deep connection in your life and relationships,
even if you want to reprogram your inner critic while you're sleeping,
this is a great place to be.
So welcome, and we hope this episode brings you just a tidbit you needed today.
Enjoy the show.
Hello, everybody. Welcome. Today we're going to be talking about stretching yourself thin and leaving space for you. You can find self-reflection prompts for this episode and every episode on our Instagram at Wholehearted Loving, and you can learn more about us and how to practice with us live at wholeheartedloving.com. And before we get started, we'll do a body-based self-connection practice to connect with ourselves before we connect with each other and this podcast.
Okay, so as usual, I'm taking a moment to just feel what's underneath you that feels sturdy, whether that's what you're sitting on or laying on or standing on. Today's practice is something you could do sitting, standing, laying, walking. So it's quite versatile. And how I discovered it for myself is actually quite funny. One of my kids plays lacrosse, box lacrosse, and field lacrosse, but box is the one that as a mom I feel harder to watch for like worrying about injuries. And then also hockey. And I found myself doing this in the middle of the arena while I'm watching his games. And I didn't know exactly why, but I knew it made me feel better. And so I've sort of just brought it into my life and my day. And then just recently I was watching some reel and it was talking about which acupressure point that is and why that's helpful. And now I don't remember, but I'm more about discovering what feels good for you and continuing to do the things that feel good, regardless of what the actual reason is or what the science is. Not that I'm against science and things, but your body knows what feels good for you. So I want to share with you what has felt good for me and give you an opportunity to see if it feels good for you. And as always with things that are new, sometimes it might not feel good right away, but I would say as long as it doesn't feel horrible and you're open, give it a try and see. So this is using one of my fingers. I think I often use my middle finger for some reason. And the point that I'm touching is on my face. It's just under my nose, between my nose and my top lip. And so I found myself just sitting in the bleachers at the arena, hockey and lacrosse, watching them smash each other into the boards. And I would just be pressing on this spot. And sometimes I'd make little circles there. Sometimes I'd just hold it there. And I would pay attention to my breath. And what I also discovered is sometimes I like having this finger here, and you can use your pointer or your middle. And then I tuck my thumb of the same hand sort of under my chin. And I would just sit there in the stands like this. And I would notice things changing for me. Like my breath would change. I would be a little bit more okay with what's happening on the floor, on the ice. And then I noticed myself doing this randomly at other points in the day, where I guess I noticed I was feeling a bit overwhelmed and I would just touch this spot.
Interesting.
Yeah. And I think as I heard about this reel, I don't think they spoke about it, but I looked it up and they said this is a helpful point to press on if you find yourself a little bit like disassociating, right? And checking out, and that you want to bring a little bit more presence back. And I noticed, I'm like, oh, interesting, because I think I've used it for that purpose too, without knowing that's what I was doing.
Well, that's the neat thing, right? All of these things that we've discovered, I've noticed that I used these sorts of things to self-soothe before I knew what they were. And then when you find out there's science, there's just like inevitably science or pressure points or something. The body really knows.
Yeah. So the purpose of sharing this with you is not to say this is fantastic, you must use it, take it into your life, but one, to give you something to try and see how it feels for you. And two, to remind you that you're doing all sorts of things already. probably without really realizing it, that are helping your body be a little bit more here, be a little bit more okay with something else that's happening in your body or your mind that doesn't feel so good.
Mhm.
And the reminder to bring a little bit more awareness to those things so that you can start using those tools with a little bit more intention
Yeah.
instead of, really randomly or not realizing that it's really a tool for you that you can take with you anywhere.
Yeah. This is interesting also because I used to know a woman, and anytime she smoked a cigarette, she would
Mhm.
run it on that part of her lip, like before every
Mm,
puff.
interesting.
Isn't that interesting? There's something in there that she was doing for herself unconsciously.
It feels
Yeah,
nice.
it does. Yeah, it's nice. And
Mhm.
I like rubbing it back and forth and feeling my teeth underneath my fingers.
That wiggles my nose in a funny, itchy way. But what I noticed too is when I press on this spot, so again, it's between the bottom of your nose and your upper lip. When I press here, I feel a bit of settling, but I also like to press here and then intentionally pay attention to my breath.
Mm.
And something about it sort of settles and slows me down.
There's
Yeah.
something to the addition of the thumb under the chin I really like.
Yeah.
There's something I feel like I can't describe sensations, but it's like a wizardy feeling, like a thoughtful, like I'm sort of closing my mouth and like containing my thoughts in a
Mm.
wise feeling way. Like it feels like a being with moment.
It is a being with moment, I think. Yeah.
Thanks, Gigi.
So there that is.
I love it. Well, we were going to talk today about
Too
too
many,
many
so many
yeses on
yeses.
the door.
I wrote down on my list the yeses that I said that day that led to me wanting to lose it on my kid. And there's a lot and it makes me laugh because that's how it happens.
Yeah.
Right.
So spreading ourselves thin, right? Saying
Mhm.
yes to a bunch of things that individually are no big deal and we can totally do all these things. But now we've said yes to so many things and a straw breaks our camel back and we lose our minds, right?
Yes. So exactly. Each of the things individually, as I'm going to tell you what happened, are really not a big deal. But it's when, like Steph says, when we say many yeses to many small things. And also, I want to add, we don't take the context of the situation into account. Like, what are you going through that day? How are you feeling that day? What else is happening? Right, in this time period of your life, that's when you really put yourself at risk for losing it and losing it on the wrong people. I really want to stress that because as I walk you through this story, what I realized is by the afternoon, I wanted to just, the first time I saw my kid, just lose it on him. But I realized upon reflection, I'm like, this is not about him. He didn't actually do anything wrong. It was me saying yes to all of these things. And now I want to blame it on him. So here is the story. It was just this week, and let me set this up what was happening. It was a Tuesday morning. We are getting ready to leave the house to go to school. And one of the first yeses I said is tonight we're going to sleep at your dad's house. We have a very good relationship and he wasn't going to be at his house and it makes our life a little bit easier to be at our house on certain nights because of late night sports and kids getting to sleep a little bit longer in the morning. That's one yes that I say that many other parents might not say yes to that because it sort of inconveniences me. But I know that it gives my kids both probably an extra hour of sleep when they're already short on it that night before. And it's just more pleasant in other ways. So, anyways, that's my first yes. So they asked this morning, hey, are we sleeping at dad's tonight? I said, yes, we are. But what that means for me is that I need to pack up all my stuff so that I have what I need for that night and the next morning. Okay. So that was my first yes. And then we progress in the morning, and his lacrosse bag is at the front door. And he's just played a lacrosse game the night before, and he's going to need it again today after school because he has a practice. And he had gotten a short sleep the night before, woke up pretty tired, and was already carrying his school bag. And he's like, hey, Mom, would it be okay? Would you just carry that bag down for me later after school when you come get us? And I just wanted to get out the door at that point. So I was like, yeah, sure. I'll take your bag for you. No worries. Right. So there was another yes. Not that big of a deal. Just bringing his lacrosse gear into the car when I left the house later that day. And then we had a haircut that day, the haircut that my kids have been waiting for a long time because our schedules haven't really allowed for it to be scheduled. This was the context, one piece of the context. I think in hindsight, that's not a normal thing we have. Probably would be more helpful to take that into account of how that's going to make our after school experience. So he says, we were trying to decide where I would pick them up because it was going to be tight picking them up from school and getting over to this barber shop. And we were debating between, should he walk to Dad's first and I'll pick them both up from there and we'll leave from there, or am I picking him up from school? Anyways, all this logistical stuff. In the end, he said, could you pick me up from school? He's like, I don't think I'll make it on time to get it back to Dad's, which dude's a high level athlete. He could run there if he needed to and make it on time. But here I am thinking, he's just finished a long day at school. Let's not rush him and let's just pick him up from school, pick up the other kid and head out. So I said yes to picking him up. I also said yes to picking him up at 3:30 when school ends, which at the time, my body was already saying some things like, do you really want to say 3:30? Because I knew that would leave me with less time to get my stuff done. But the alternative is picking him up half an hour later and he's hanging around waiting for me. And so it was another moment of, well, I'd rather not inconvenience him. There's nothing stopping me from picking up him at 3:30. I can do that. It leaves me a little bit less time, but it's doable. And this is where my old programming of if it's doable, and then do it. If it's doable, then do it for somebody. So anyways, there was another yes, 3:30. Then it was, hey, Mom, because, actually I asked him, like, when are you going to eat between this after school, the barber, your lacrosse practice? And he was like, oh, could you bring me a snack? Bring me something. Again, not a big deal.
What is it, prawn curry? Has he requested some sort of lovely meal for you to make?
Well, I did. I was going to make meatball subs for dinner. And I was like, how do I transport that for after school in the car? And I'm like, no, just make a quick throw a sandwich together. So I said
But
yes.
wait. Tuesdays now are the busy sports nights, so you are no longer cooking on Tuesdays. Is that still, are we on that
So
schedule?
we were on that schedule, but this Tuesday I had some time during the day. So I was like, I can make that.
Right.
That works. So that was actually okay. But probably I didn't take that into context of I had decided that I am going to cook dinner on Tuesday and that
Right.
would mean less time for me to do other things. Right. So now you see things are stacking up.
Yeah.
But they're all individually pretty minor things, like not a big deal thing. So anyways, oh, I forgot earlier in the day. It just gets funny. I mean, I'm glad I can laugh about it. He had said to me the night before, Mom, I'm going to get up at 6:45. And I was like, really, dude? Like, are you? But I was like, okay. He's like, and I'm going to make my own breakfast. I'm going to cook something. I'm like, okay, great. So morning comes. He's like, actually, no, I'm going to keep sleeping. I'll just eat something at Dad's. Like, okay, fine. So here I am in my mind thinking, by the time I drop them off, I have maybe about 15 minutes to go for a little stroll, a walk in the morning before I go to the gym. That will be really nice. That was a pleasant surprise, a little bit of like pocket of time that I won that day. So we get to his dad's house and I'm like, or we're almost there. He's like, Mom, do you think you could make me breakfast? And again, context a little bit. I had not seen my kids for 10 days. I was just away with you. We were away for a bit. So it was my sort of first school day back. And I was like, my kid's asking me to make him breakfast. I really do like making my kids breakfast, and he's asking. So, okay, yes, I can make you breakfast. And I knew at the time, if I say yes to this, I'm saying no to the walk. And I was okay with that. Right. So, okay. So, anyways, I am going through my day. I'm making meatball subs. And then I'm thinking, what do I pack for after school snack? And I'm gathering the things I need to bring. And then I've got his lacrosse bag. I got the food bag. I got my own bag. And if you know me, one of my like pet peeves is being the bag lady, although I always find myself in the situation of being the bag lady. So I'm like huffing and carrying these huge bags out the door, and I'm annoyed. And I'm like internally grumbling. And I'm grumbling at my kid. Like, why can't you take your own bag? And like, why do I have to be inconvenienced and take both bags and all three bags and all this stuff, right? And I was ready in my mind having this fight with him that like as soon as I saw him after school, I was going to say, you're going to have to carry your own bag from now on, and I'm not going to pick you up at school, and you're going to have to figure out your own snack, and like you got to make your own breakfast, and you can't change your plans at the last minute. Like I was ready to like unleash. And then I took a step back. I was like, let's look at this. Like, what happened here today? And that's when I saw, like, on my drive there, I was like, I was the one that said yes to all of these things. He didn't make me. I could have said no to any of them. I could have said no to all of them, right? But I said yes. And so I realized, like, this is like, it would be very unfitting for me now to like go and lose it on him, right? And these are a few things that run through my mind. First, I was still planning on losing it on him. And I thought, and I'm proud of myself for this, I thought, after school, the moment your child sees you after they've had school all day is probably not the best time to launch into all my complaints about what I'm not going to do for him anymore and what's not okay and how he needs to be more responsible. I thought, let's not do that. Not good timing. And then I also thought, actually, let's not lose it on him at all because he didn't do anything wrong. This was me stretching myself thin, pushing past what would have felt good for me. And it was funny because because I'm like running around trying to do all this, I'm now, I don't know, maybe 10 minutes late. And then I also took the wrong turn. And so now I'm late. And I wanted to blame him for being late.
Yeah. Relatable.
Right? Because if it wasn't for all these things he asked me to do, then I
Yeah.
wouldn't have been late. And I'm just having a chuckle and laughing at myself when this is happening in my mind. Like, see the thing, and this is what I'm proud of because this was now happening in my mind, whereas in the past it would have just happened in real life.
Yeah.
And then this, I'm super proud of this. I realized I said, actually, I think I'm the one who needs to apologize to him because I'm late.
Yeah.
And I know one thing that really bugs him is like when I tell him I'll pick him up at a certain time and I'm late because he sort of factored in sort of how he scheduled the time after that. And he's told me before, if you're going to be late, it's okay, but just tell me so I know and I know what to expect. Totally fair. I would think the same thing. Old self would have been, I have every right to be mad at you because I'm late, because you asked me to do all these things. And the other day I was like, you know what? I think that I'm the one who needs to apologize. And my old self might have thought that, might have even gotten to that point and been like, hell no. There's no way I'm apologizing. This is your fault. And I was like, no, I think it would also be better for our relationship if I just acknowledge, hey, I'm late. I told you I'd be here at this time and I wasn't. I'm sorry. And it doesn't have to be a big deal, but just to acknowledge that.
Mm.
And I started with that, or, greeted him nicely, started with that. He's like, it's okay, mom. Right. And then we just carried on. We carried on with the plan. And then later, when we had some more connection and, the mood was lighter, I said, dude, I think that next time, like, could you carry your bag into the car yourself? Because it just means too much stuff for me to drag down on my own at the end of the day. He's like, yeah, I can do that. No problem.
Nice.
So this is the story of stretching yourself thin, saying too many small yeses,
Mm,
forgetting to take the context into account, wanting to blame somebody else when
mm,
really it's our thing, it's of our making, what position we put ourselves in. And for me, it was really about noticing this old pattern of mine, which is I'm willing to inconvenience myself if it means more convenience for someone else. And that's a pattern I really need to watch because it's quite deeply ingrained in me. And I've shifted in many ways, but that day it sort of all came together to create that.
right.
So, yeah.
That's really neat. One of the things I want us to talk about, and I think it's on our list, is reporting our minds, like narrating our reality to share it with others. And
Mhm.
I know with you and your kid, it would be useful if you said to him, like, sorry, I'm late, buddy. I said yes to too many things today. And he
Mhm.
will fold that in. And next time he
Mhm.
asks you to carry his bag, he'll be like, are you saying yes because it's actually yes, mommy? Or like, is this something we should notice?
Mhm.
I think especially for very helpful, giving, generous, loving people, like we love to say yes. And it is a yes until it's a no, until we learn to build in buffer time, like I've
Yeah.
had to learn really to build in buffer time. And I'm also keenly aware. So I'm imagining like the difference between having this kind of interaction with a kiddo is it can be easier to interact and to take the pause that we need when it's with kids. And it can be harder when it's with adults who we feel we have some understanding with, or maybe a covert agreement with, and they should just know, we shouldn't
You
need
should
to
know
tell.
not to ask me all of those
They should
things. You
know,
should
right?
know that I would just say yes to everything and overstretch
Right.
myself, and we would be in this situation. Yeah.
And then the inverse. So we take that reality and we point it back on ourselves. And we notice that if I'm taking a lot of time for myself, if I'm writing in buffer time, like after a meeting, you're going to
Mhm.
have to do actions. You schedule an extra half
Yeah.
hour after the meeting to do those kinds of things. Those are the sorts of things that people go, oh, that's smart. I should do that. But if you just start saying, oh, like I could do this thing, but I know that I'm going to have a busy day, so I just don't want to do that thing. I want to leave myself a bunch of buffer to deal with the traffic jams, to deal with the
Yep.
things that I'm going to discover I want to say yes to in the moment.
Yeah.
And when you're relating that to somebody who hasn't made space for themselves in that way, I mean, I'm going to just look like a bitch, like a selfish bitch?
I have thought that about people before because I'm like, but you don't have to have that downtime. You could do this thing I'm asking you to do. Why are
Yeah.
you saying no? Right. And the thing is, to make it even worse, I wouldn't actually say that to the person because I
Of
was also
course.
a people pleaser and a nice girl. So I would
Yeah.
just think that about them and be internally, secretly annoyed.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Very
And
relatable.
so I have had to learn, and I'm still learning how to add buffer time into my day. And I think we're going to do another episode where we talk a little bit more about the conditioning that puts us in a situation where it doesn't even occur to us to create buffer time,
Yeah.
right? But yeah.
There's also situations where we're going to be like, so even for a people pleaser who wants to say yes to everything, when we get to that one bite bandwidth situation, when a catastrophe has happened, when somebody has died, super easy for us to say no.
Yeah.
Even if there's nothing on the docket, it's just like, this is a hell time. I need all of my mental and emotional capacity. No one can have any of it. And that feels like clear and easy. But when it's little dinky things and nothing's really going on, we feel like we should really overgive in those ways. So it's neat to notice that we have both capacities and we're just applying them differently.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So I've had to learn that even when nobody's dying, that it's okay to add in buffer time. You're not a bitch,
No.
right? It's
Yeah.
okay. And the funny thing is you're more likely to act that way in an aggressive, blamey, shamey kind of way when you have stretched yourself too thin and not taken the buffer time, right? The irony of that is that you actually end up behaving in ways that you don't love because you've said yes to too much. So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. For me, it's really important. So I'm quite good at that, at asserting that time for myself. And at first, I had to really explain it. Like, here's what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. And it was sort of this anticipating backlash or complaint about it that I was like preparing myself for. And now it feels more like I have my priorities firmly entrenched and they're important to me. Like, I know what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. So if I'm encountering someone who feels like, okay, I understand what you're saying, but like, I still screw you for doing this thing, they quietly think in their mind. I can hold that now because I know what I'm doing and why I'm doing it.
Well, you're valuing, like, what does your buffer time create for you that you value?
Something I've learned that is wildly unpopular in the world, the regular world, is that I need like 3 days of alone time every week in order to be maximally creative and able to do what I feel my work in the world is. And that feels
Mhm.
like the only important thing. Plus, it's very important to me to have buffer to what is a yes that arises. Like, I don't want to have my day full of maybes and not
Mhm.
quite. I want it to be full of yeses. So if anything comes along that's like, well, that's not really, but I could do it. I could, so I should. I'm just like, no, because something else is going to come up that I want to say yes to, and I won't have the time or energy because I've said yes to this no thing.
This is huge. Just that,
Yeah.
right? Because I've been such a yes person to the, yeah, sure, I guess, right? Or, yeah, sure, I should. Or, yeah, sure, I could. And I have, over the course of my life, found so many times where there's no room to add in that spontaneous, oh my gosh, yes, I really want to do that. And this is what I would do. So it's not that I would miss out on the yes because I also had FOMO. So I would say yes to that too. And then I really have a jam packed full life.
Mhm.
Right. And so, yeah, this has been a muscle I've really had to grow and look at. How do I say no to some things, even if it might look like not the nice girl anymore or the easygoing one? Or, I think sometimes we, in our relationships, in our friendships, in our work relationships, people start seeing us in a certain role because of how we've always shown up. Right. So if you've always shown up as the yes girl, the yes person, and you're starting to grow this muscle of, oh, maybe it needs to be a no, you might get some pushback. Not only does it feel yucky for you because it's new and it's scary, but the people around you might not be loving it. Right. And they might be confused. And so you're also dealing with that.
Yeah.
I think learning that and teaching people, like doing a new dance with people, that's what it is.
Yeah.
Right. So,
Yeah. If I can't show up for something wholeheartedly, I'm like not doing it. I used to show up quite resentfully and like, yeah, sure, I said yes to this, and now I'm going to be a resentful hag about it. That's not how I want to show up. So, how can I take responsibility for that? What am I giving too much of? Like, what mood am I in? What's my nervous system state? How can I show up the way I want to? And that for me involved things like more sleep, different food, more awareness of what I'm doing and why I'm
mhm.
doing it is really what it comes down to.
Well, I remember, maybe we'll end off with this little tidbit here. I remember when I met you, and this is how I experienced you. I don't know if you will remember the timeline in a similar way, but I feel like I met you in your no phase. And you were like, I was like, wow, this woman, like, she's got good, strong boundaries. Like, I just knew in all the people that we hung out with, I'm like, Steph would never say yes to something unless it's a full on yes. Like, I can
Amazing.
count on her that if it's a maybe, she'll just say no. And I
Mm,
was so, I think, a mix of things, inspired by that. I felt hopeful about that. I felt a little bit scared. I remember like pep talking myself, if she says no to you, it's not personal. But I thought that was really something helpful for me to try to emulate because that was such a hard thing for me to do.
that's
And I
awesome.
really did practice with you in mind of, if it's not a real yes, even if it's a maybe, just say no. Just
That's
say no
awesome.
for now.
Yeah. And the wonderful sort of fallout from being this way, like I definitely can rub people the wrong way initially, and that response that you're describing is pretty common, I think. But the other side of that is that it causes you to trust me, right? So it rubs
Yes.
you the wrong way, but you'll get the truth. And people sort of, as you say, like inspired, maybe a little bit like offended and afraid. Yeah, that's an important
Yes.
thing. So if you're running around saying yes when you mean no, it's an interesting way to maintain connection because it's not really 100% authentic, right? And yeah.
Yeah, I think this is a big deal. Like, I always knew I could trust your yes, and that felt really nice because I know that you're not gonna do something with me and then be secretly later or during the time annoyed and resentful.
Yeah,
Whereas I think many of us who are used to saying yes when it's really a no or a maybe are very familiar with that experience. And it helps friendship feel really good when I
mhm.
know she's here because she really wants to be here. And what I realized is when in the times where I was more of that, I'll say yes, even if it's a maybe or even if it's a no. Then when other people, other than you, would say yes
Mm,
to me, I would be like, "Yeah, but do you really wanna be here? Do you really wanna be doing that thing?" And I would be questioning and, like, maybe they really do, but because I don't operate on that framework of only say yes when it's a yes, I assume other people are also lying. And
yeah,
so I'm questioning, like, "Are you really wanting to be here?" And it just makes relationship unnecessarily messy.
it does. Yeah, yeah, tons of compounding effects. This is more of that road to hell being paved with good intentions, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Well, let's go on a different road.
Let's do that. Yeah. I wrote down making yes easy in terms of time and energy. Like I spoke to this already, but there are so many things you want to say yes to, and there are
Mm,
ways to make that more easeful for you energetically and like timing and schedule wise. And I think another aspect of this is that sometimes I'll say yes to something that I want but also don't want at the same time, or that I want to want. And then my little attitude might come in while I'm in the middle of doing this thing that I almost want or want mostly. And that's an opportunity because I now know this yes so much and my enthusiastic yes response that when it isn't quite that, but I know intellectually this is something that's either good for me or that I want, but I'm just
mm.
maybe feeling a little sour. I have enough space and pause to be able to go, hey, my attitude is not feeling great right now. And I can do something about that. I can remember what I'm doing and why I'm doing it.
Yes, you can remember the part of you that felt like that was a yes, even though it wasn't the strongest yes that you know, right? And I think that's where did we get into this conversation? I was on a group call the other day and someone had said yes to a work project that would mean that they were going to be excessively busy for 3 weeks. And she said, I knew that going in, saying yes to that. And as we were talking about it, she's like, but I'm feeling so guilty now. It's been such a tough couple weeks because I've been neglecting my self care and feeling bad in all these ways. And I'm stretched thin. And we chatted and we said, well, do you pretty much know you're going to ride this 3 week project out? Like, you don't have intentions of like backing out and quitting, right? Like, you're planning on completing it. And she's like, yeah, I'm planning on completing it. Like, in that case, like, would it feel nicer to orient to like the parts of this that feel good and that you like and why you said yes? And we did some somatic work around that, and meaning like we did some body stuff around that. And she was really surprised by, oh, she's like, I actually like the work that I'm doing. I'm like, oh, isn't that neat? And what happens in your face and your body and your movement when you orient to the fact that you actually like this work that you said yes to? She's like, I feel much better. And I feel much better about this decision. Now I think, hey, it's just 3 weeks. It's going to be okay. It's going to be a bit rough, but we have a plan, just follow the plan and it's all going to work out. So all of a sudden, she was orienting to a new feeling in the body, a new movement in the body, which connected her to a new way of thinking about the situation. And someone wrote in the comments of that call, like, yes, let's not add more misery.
Yeah.
Right? You already know you're not quitting the project. So why make those 3 weeks worse than it has to be? How
Here,
can we
here.
make it more decent? A little bit like other people say, I love it when you say a little bit less bad. How do you make it a little bit less bad or a little bit better or a lot better, right? By choosing what you orient to, by choosing how you make that time a little bit more easeful and more pleasant for yourself.
Yeah. Oh, it's so easy to just pile on. Yeah. There's one more thing that I want to say about my year of yes,
Mm.
because this was like normal and good. Like most people would agree, yeah, that sounds good. You should do that. And like, no is what I maybe should. I needed to do it. But when I first started in real estate, I was like, I'm going to say yes to every single thing for the first year because I know that will yield some tremendous results. And I think there are people who would agree that you should just do that all the time, make the money, do the thing. And boy, is that impossible. Like, of course, made a lot of money. Great. I was stretched so thin, it was unbelievable. But because my focus, I knew what I was doing and why I was doing it, and I was not quitting. It was a year and that was it. But there would be nights where it was like, oh God, now I also have to go to a networking event. Like, I'm going to die, but I'm doing it because I said I would. And then bless the universe. Anytime that happened and I was really like, I really don't want to go, but I'm going, the event would be canceled like clockwork. I started being able to rely on the universe to have my back in this way. And so that was really neat. And I also want to say that when you met me, I think, yes, I was probably in my no time. And that took like 37 years to get to. And I think that at that time, it was an easier for me to say no outwardly because I was saying yes to all the things that I didn't actually want in my relationship. Like all of my yes energy was focused on the relationship I was in, and
Mm.
the rest of the world can kind of not have my energy, was
Mm.
sort of part of the
Right.
vibe. So there's like
Right.
sneaky ego ways that we're handling this stuff for ourselves.
Well, it's interesting hearing that because what I sense, if I sort of track back to that time in your life and what came after, I think at some point you really stepped into the no energy when it came to relationships that were misaligned, right? It was a really strong no. So it was a yes for a period of time. Let me try to make this misaligned thing work. Let me try to actually not see that it's misaligned. I wanted to highlight this because if you hear us talking, you're hearing these different phases in our life where we were actively choosing to practice different skills. And where now we have a lot more access. Each of these muscles is a little stronger so that we can make choices in our life that feel a little bit better. And yet we're still practicing. We're still realizing what needs a tweak and what needs more practice. So I hope you remember that this isn't an overnight thing. If it's taken you a long time to see your pattern, shift your pattern, grow the new muscle, that's normal. It takes time. And sometimes you need a season of yes after you've been in a long season of no, or a season of no after you've been long seasons of yes. And you're just building a different muscle. And to always say yes or to always say no isn't the answer. It's that you feel ultimately at some point that both are available to you and
Yeah,
neither make you a bad person, and that
totally.
you get to use your discernment with your mind and your body and your gut, your intuition, to decide moment to moment what feels like a yes or a no or a maybe or I need some time to think about it or to
Yeah.
sit with it.
It's like being reborn and growing up. Like I had my phase of like, what is this? What's going on around me? And then I had the terrible twos. It was like, no, 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 no. And I'm still growing up.
And, I think it's important that you mention like the terrible twos, like developmentally, there are times in our lives where we're meant to practice and grow that muscle. Society is sort of accepted that when you're sort of in that toddler preschool age, parents don't love it, but we sort of anticipate this is when you say no. We sort of have given a pass to teenagers of like, this is when we anticipate you're going to step into your no a little bit more. And even having said that, unfortunately, not all children are given the freedom to learn that and play with that and explore that with a sense of emotional safety around them to practice their no's, right? I don't feel like my no's were welcomed and encouraged, and that there was a space for me to practice growing that muscle. So then I just became a yes kid and a yes person and a yes woman and a yes adult until it didn't work anymore. And there was burnout and resentment and all these misaligned relationships and work situations and career paths that I had to, as an adult, allow myself to have that developmental phase again of playing with the no and feeling my way into it and feeling what it's like to disappoint someone when you say no. Ideally, we learn that in our younger years so that when we leave the house, we're like, I feel pretty confident in my no, and it's okay if it hurts someone's feelings, right?
Wow.
They will be okay as long as I did it with care and respect and integrity and I repair when it's needed. Like, I'm allowed to say no. Anyways.
Thanks, Gigi. Yeah, these are the things that are so unfamiliar in most of our families, and that we get to practice as adults. You can come practice with us. If this feels challenging, we're with you.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else you want to say before we do a closing practice?
Nope.
Nope.
I think
Okay.
that's it.
Oh, you're rocking
Yes,
a
this
little baby.
became rocking the baby. This just emerged as the body connection practice to rock your baby, right? Rock your water bottle. I'm just rocking my arms. I have my dolly, Chili Bean. I could rock her.
Billy Bean. And I have an espresso to go cup. Little babies.
Yes. I remember one practice that we walked people through, which was just to find a bag of sugar, a bag of flour, or something, bag of oatmeal, something with a little bit of weight to it, and rock it and carry it around and like it was the baby. And I don't know if you had this class in high school where you carry the egg around or the sack of flour or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
but I think physiologically, neurologically, I don't know, like it must bring up something that's more maternal,
Mm-hmm.
that's softer when you hold something that has a bit of weight and you're rocking,
Yeah,
right? That sort of soothes the system, at least soothes my system.
there's something. We've got our arms across the midline. We know that's
Mm-hmm.
doing something.
Yeah.
The
There's
act
a
of
bit of
holding
holding,
and
right?
rocking. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
All of
all.
those things. Yeah. So even if you don't have a prop or don't want to use a prop, I've just actually created a hold. So I'm not actually like before I was holding my elbows and rocking, but I actually notice it feels better if I wrap my arm across my body and my arm and create a little hold and rock.
Mm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks, Gigi. This is
Mhm.
again the sort of thing like I'm imagining having a real emotional freak out and how I might tend to my body while I'm with those feelings. And for me, certainly in the past, like I wouldn't have just had this little loving self response when not much of anything was happening. It took the freak out for me to go, okay, I need to like hold myself and rock back and forth or something like that. But that has
Mhm.
benefits just if you have a small annoyance that's
Yeah,
happening.
or even no annoyance, right?
Yeah.
We always remind people practice when you have no annoyance, when things are sort of decent and fine, because that's how you're going to grow that muscle and that pathway to bring it in when the annoyance is a little bit bigger or when it's like really big. And I like that you said tending to your body when something is going on. Whereas I think for many of us, the old pattern is there's no tending to the body when I'm having a hard time. If anything, I'm now berating myself and shaming myself for having a hard time, which is just not very nice.
No, it doesn't really help. And there's so many wonderful alternatives we now
Mm.
know.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Well, thanks,
Okay.
Gigi. Okay. Well, then that's it for this week. Thank you guys for being with us. I hope you can bring some of this into your world. If anything we've said here today has been helpful for you, please share with somebody that you care about, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.